Shalom, everybody. This is Chris with firstcenturychristianity.net. Thank you for giving me some time out of your day to listen to a message, a teaching. Today's message is entitled Lawlessness, and those who teach that the law ended at the cross have no standing to complain about where society is today. I'm going to explain this from the Torah in a way that you have probably never heard before. Today's message was given earlier today at the assembly, but this generated so much discussion and we had technical difficulties that I had to scrap that one. So here we go with take two. In Joshua 9, right? Have you ever heard anybody preach the law from Joshua 9 before? But we're going to talk about something that's really foundational. And if you get rid of the Torah, people who nail that the law is ended at the cross are so out of whack that there's nowhere to begin how absurd that is. So we start in Joshua 9. Okay, this is a very unique situation. For the refresher, or for those who may be listening and maybe be new to the scriptures or whatever, at the Exodus that the Israelites were brought out of Egypt, crossed the Red Sea, given the Torah, and then for 39 years, 40 total, they had to wander in the wilderness until the generation that came out of Egypt died off. And then in Joshua 5 is where they stop at the Jordan River and circumcise themselves, cross the river, and keep the first Passover in the land. The first Passover they've kept in 39 years, incidentally, because they did it 1 year after the Exodus, and they didn't do it again until Joshua 5 when they entered the land. And there was miraculously enough grain in the land that was planted by somebody else that they were able to feed 2 million people, and the manna stopped, which is why this is appropriate to the days of unleavened bread, because the Torah, many times the Torah says, when you enter the land, when you enter the land. And so when they entered the land, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. It was a very, very good moment in time where they were very obedient. And we get to Joshua 9. And so the Israelites have entered the land and have had some success demolishing the inhabitants. Their fame is now known far and wide, and the people even know the name of Yahweh in Canaan. They know that Yahweh destroyed the Egyptians. They know he brought the Hebrews across the Red Sea. This is 40 years after the fact, and all that stuff is known now. People have noticed that the nation of Israel, of Egypt doesn't even exist anymore, much less in its former glory. So there's a group of people called the Gibeonites who inhabit the land, and they know all of this stuff. They know that the Israelites are coming to destroy everybody in this land. They don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to flee. They don't want to fight. They know they can't make any deals with them. So these guys are very shrewd. They set up Israel to let them live in the land. They send 3 emissaries who through a big ordeal, are made to look like they have come from a very long way. These emissaries show up, they shower Israel with praise, and they ask for a covenant. And Israel failed to consult with Yahweh and made the covenant and promised not to destroy the Gibeonites. They said, oh, okay, all right, well, we swear by Yahweh not to destroy you. 3 days later, they discover the deception. These guys had only traveled 3 days to meet the Israelites. So maybe they were doing this out of desperation because they knew they were going to get smote. Who knows? But they deceive Israel into making a covenant. And so we arrive at this scripture, Joshua 9:17 through 19. Then the sons of Israel set out and came to their cities on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon and Kephirah and Beeroth and Kiriath Jearim. The sons of Israel did not strike them because the leaders of the congregation had sworn to them by Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel. And all the whole congregation grumbled against the leaders. But all the leaders said to the whole congregation, we've sworn to them by Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel. Now we cannot touch them. This is a foundational principle here from the Torah. Even though Israel was commanded to destroy the inhabitants of the land, and even though their covenant was clearly fraudulent, they had to honor it. Why? Because they swore an oath to Yahweh. This cuts two ways. The first, they have to honor their oath to Yahweh because he's Yahweh, and if they swear falsely to him, then they are doomed. They also have to honor it, or the word of the nation means nothing. If they didn't honor that covenant, they would not be able to make any agreements ever again because they would be seen as trustworthy, and also they would be seen to have taken the name of their God in vain. That they wouldn't even believe in their God because they swore to their God that they would not destroy these people. Now, this I'm explaining. I'm going to come back to this at the end of the message, and you're going to have a V8 moment. But I want to explain to you that this cuts two ways. This is Israel swearing to Yahweh, and then Israel having to obey that oath. That cuts two ways. Malachi 3:6 says, "For I, Yahweh, do not change, therefore you, sons of Jacob, are not consumed." Do you know what that means? I mean, really, really know what this means. It means that whenever Yahweh says something, that it has to stay. It has to be. It has to be true. It means that he made a covenant with Israel and he won't go back on it. He can't. Because if he did, then nobody would know what to believe from him. So do you understand that Israel has to keep the covenant they made with the deceitful people because if they don't, then nobody's ever going to believe him again. Same thing works from Yahweh to the people. Whatever Yahweh says he's going to do, he has to do. Otherwise, we don't know what to believe. So let's look at these covenants here. There's a lot of stuff on the screen, but the first one, Genesis 15:18, on that day Yahweh made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your descendants I have given this land from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates." Now, the next is Genesis 17:1 through 7. When Abram was 99 years old, Yahweh appeared to Abram and said to him, "I am Elohim Almighty. Walk before me, be blameless. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly." Abram fell on his face, and Elohim talked with him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you will be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings will come forth from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant to be Elohim to you and your descendants after you." Okay? So these are the covenants that Yahweh made, and he has to keep no matter what happens. He has to keep them. And now the next verse is the biggest example I can show you of him keeping it even when he doesn't want to keep it. Exodus 32:12 through 13. This is what has happened. The Hebrews have come out of Egypt. They are at the base of Mount Sinai. Yahweh gives the 10 commandments. It gets to the 10th commandment. The people say, "Stop it. Send us Moses." Moses goes up on the mountain for 40 days. Moses then comes back down and finds out that these people had just sworn not to do idols and not to do anything wrong. And sure enough, they probably didn't even make it 10 days. They started making these idols. By the time Moses comes down, they've made the idols and they're partying to the idols. So Moses smashes the tablets, gets back up on the mountain, and Yahweh is saying, "That's enough. I'm going to kill them all. I'm going to start all over with you, Moses." Moses' reply, right here, Exodus 32:12 through 13. "Why should the Egyptians speak, saying, with evil intent, he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to destroy them from the face of the earth? Turn from your burning anger and change your mind about doing harm to your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by yourself, and said to them, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and all this land of which I have spoken I will give to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever. Do you understand that the foundation of having order or society or any type of civilization starts with honor? If two people come to an agreement, seal that agreement, however that's accomplished, they both have to honor the agreement. Today, in the case of Joshua 9, if someone were to make a fraudulent agreement, you can get out of it because it's happened so many times that our society has agreed that if you make an agreement, a covenant, sometimes they're even called covenants if you have homeowners associations and stuff, that if you make a covenant, if one side conceals information that is determined to be material, material meaning something that would affect the outcome negatively, specifically, if somebody conceals information, then you can make the contract null and void. Like if you were going to sell a building and you put it on the market for fair market value, but you knew that it had a crack in the foundation that had been covered up 3 years prior, and it was just covered up and wasn't fixed. If you didn't tell the people that, when they found out, you would be in trouble and the contract would be null and void. This happens all over the place in our society. But that's because our society has agreed to this, and you're making a contract with a person, you're not making a contract with the Almighty. But here in Exodus 32:12-13, Yahweh promised to make Israel a great nation and to make Abraham the father of many nations. That's why he brought them out of Egypt. Moses appears to be talking back to Yahweh here, but it's a lesson for us all. Moses is saying, look, Yahweh, you just destroyed Egypt, 10 plagues, crossed the Red Sea. Everybody has seen this cloud. They've seen the pillar of fire. They know you. If you destroy this people, it's going to make people think you are a destroyer. That you just destroyed Egypt so that you could bring these people out and destroy them just the same. And then it's going to damage the reputation. Nobody's going to want to follow you. I mean, the Israelites were told 40-ish days prior not to make any idols or worship false gods, and they sinned. Yahweh was infuriated. All the plagues, all the plundering, all the fleeing, the miracle of the Red Sea, all brought to nothing in a matter of days. But Moses says, remember your promise. You, Yahweh, don't kill them because it's going to give you a bad reputation. Don't kill them because you said you were going to make us a mighty nation. So Yahweh had to keep his covenant, even though the other side broke the deal. So in antiquity, this is, and what I just explained to you is going to become very important at the end of this message, but just understand that at the foundation of our society, Western society, is that if we make agreements between people or between nations, we have to keep them. When people say the law was nailed to the cross, this is gone too. Do you understand that that's the end of civilization if we nail the Torah to the cross? Now, the pagan gods were fickle and selfish and greedy and very, very human. They were depicted as being basically superhuman beings with powers, just like we see in our fictional movies today. They weren't like Yahweh, who's not human at all. Yahweh is something else that we don't understand. He speaks to us in human terms to relate to us and let us understand him as much as we possibly can, but we cannot comprehend an omnipotent, omniscient, and eternal being because we're none of those things. So the followers of the pagan gods didn't know what they wanted because they were myths, or worse, they were demons. So they had to guess. That's why you see the people sacrificing virgins to volcanoes that they thought were gods. Now, our Elohim is different. He communicated us through words. Debarim, right? In the beginning was the Word. He communicates to us through his Word, and we have to be able to believe it. So when you say the law was nailed to the cross, then that means you can't believe what you're reading because it had some type of an expiration date or it didn't mean as much as it said. He's referred to as a rock because rocks don't change. If he changed, we wouldn't know what to believe. Now, the pagan religions had made up gods or worse, demons, and then they had priests who were the source of the truth. And those priests could make up sins, and then make up the remedy for the sin, and they could abuse it. This exists today through a very large denomination, one of the largest Christian denomination on earth. It continues to exist today, where the priests where the whole church has a book of made up sins that they decided are sins, and then they have then they have penances that the priest gets to tell you what you have to do to believe. But with Yahweh, that's different. With Yahweh, you always know how to repent. You know the Ten Commandments are the Ten Commandments. You know how to treat people. You know how to make agreements. It does not change. Okay? So why am I talking about this? Because our society is coming to pieces. 2 Thessalonians 2, 7, 12. The mystery of lawlessness is already at work, only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Then that lawless one will be revealed, from whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming, that is, the one whose coming is in accord with all the activity of Satan and with all power, signs, false wonders, and with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. For this reason God will send upon them a deluding influence, so they will believe what is false, in order that they all may be judged who did not believe the truth, but took pleasure in wickedness. So today we met at the assembly for the last day of unleavened bread, because we're following the Torah. Torah equals law, nomos in Greek. We're doing the best we can to obey here in the 21st century because we just believe the Bible is God's words. That's it. And that's what you got. You got to come to this like a kid. His appointed times matter, as does all of the Torah. But mainstream Christianity teaches that the law was nailed to the cross. They particularly teach that these appointed times are null and void, which makes no sense whatsoever, as we see the first century church having adopted the days. Paul specifically told the church at Corinth to keep this very feast. Brothers and sisters, that could have been 25 years after the ascension of Yeshua. The Gentiles were keeping the days of unleavened bread. It's right there in the Bible. We're supposed to be doing it. So what happens when lawlessness and dishonor rule the day? The idea of the law being nailed to the cross. For hundreds of years, Christianity has taught lawlessness. So how is society supposed to be able to identify lawlessness if its citizens are taught that lawlessness is biblical? The pagan gods were fickle, but at least they were gods. Today, Western society is just making it up day by day by day. It's another abomination. It's pure chaos. And it's been a slippery slope. Do you all remember just decades ago when they said, why do you care what two consenting adults do in the privacy of their own home? I still hold that belief. I don't want the government telling people what they can do in their own home, because I don't want them telling me what I can do in my own home. But that has turned into drag queen story hour at the public library. In public, in front of very young children, rubbing this nastiness in our faces. It's positively disgusting. Decades ago, the idea was that girls had to be allowed to join the Boy Scouts. Today, boys can claim to be girls and be admitted to the girls' locker room and are actually participating in female athletics. That's crazy. And our Bible teaches that God made us man and woman, male and female, and that's it. And if we aren't allowed to believe that, then what are we allowed to believe? But those Christians who taught the law was nailed to the cross have absolutely nothing to complain about because this is the natural result of those ridiculous doctrines. That you don't need the Old Testament, that you just need the Gospels and you'll be fine. It's not true. Yeshua kept the Torah. He lived the Torah sinless. Not He wasn't sinless so we could sin. He wasn't sinless to erase the rules. Because freedom requires boundaries. In order to have peace, you have to have order. We have to have a set of expectations and limitations that society agrees upon, or we stop having a society. It doesn't even need to be a set of Christian biblical tenets. It just needs to stay put. Egypt had order and they had peace. So did Greece, so did Rome. Within their borders, they had a set of laws and punishments for breaking those laws. They had rewards for obeying the laws. Society needs boundaries in order for there to be any type of peace or order. Now, totalitarian dictators become very unpeaceful when you stray from their path. So I'm not endorsing these lifestyles, not at all. The way Yahweh set it up was for the people to agree and follow, not for there to be a dictatorial society. Yahweh set up a simple set of commandments. The people cried. He finished up with Moses on the mountain, while the people obeyed. Then he added the laws about the priesthood to keep them on the straight and narrow. Israel fell away over and over and over, but they never descended into the depravity that we have today. Not even close. And they always knew the path back. Remember when Nehemiah and Ezra came back from Babylon, they read the same exact Torah that was given to Moses, and the people changed. They got rid of their idols. They got rid of their abominations. They did some harsh stuff, but they did it. They always knew the path back because what had defined had not changed. As far as individuals go, we are in the process of surpassing Sodom and Gomorrah at breakneck pace. We are on the fast track to Genesis 6, where the thoughts of men were evil continually. All because our society has discarded the basic principles of God and of nature. We are now trying to say that there's more than two genders when every species of mammal has two genders, male and female, and that's it. And if we can't even look around at nature and realize order, then we are no better than the animals. So remember, I set this one up with national sense, and now I'm going to get to that part. With the Israelites having to honor their covenant, even though it was made in deceit. Well, brothers and sisters, we've broken those rules as well, to the point that our oldest ally, France, is now moving away from us. The actual country that assisted us, the United States, in becoming a country at our foundation, the 1700s, has now started to turn the corner. And there's a big reason for it. The French president, who was one of our best friends just 4 years ago, has openly indicated he can't trust us anymore because our government is ran by dishonorable people. When we abandoned our allies in Afghanistan, we told the world they can't trust us anymore. That abrupt withdrawal, where we abandoned the airport before we even got our own citizens out, left all of our hardware behind, showed the world that our word means nothing. Because we left our allies behind. We were over there operating for 20 years, whether you like it or not. Remember, I said the covenants aren't perfect. Whether you like it or not, we were over there with Swedes, Dutch, French, British, Aussie, Canadian. We had the entire free world had skin in the game to protect that country and to keep terrorism at bay, and we left them all behind. Our allies who depend on us for their existence have betrayed us this week with intelligence, because we all had an agreement. All the free nations were sharing intelligence and classified information to make it possible for us to continue to have a free world. Now, because of these leaks, it's impossible for those nations to share intelligence with us. We're becoming alone, and Europe is having to move away from us because it can't count on us anymore. Within this dump of classified information was evidence of us spying on our own friends. And our nation's leaders are more concerned with men being able to shower with girls than they are of our common defense and standing in the world. We've become a nation of complete lawlessness, mandated lawlessness, from the top down. For more than 2 centuries, this nation was the bedrock, and that was because we were a force for good. In 2 short years, that has completely collapsed. Completely. There are no boundaries. There's nothing to cling to. Matthew 24:11-14. Many false prophets will arise and mislead many. Because lawlessness has increased, most people's love will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. The gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. I want you to understand that most people read this as the gospel of the kingdom shall be accepted by the whole world. And that is not what this says. This is the gospel's going forth to the whole world as a testimony. So the righteousness was preached to the world. So when Yeshua comes back, he can hold the world accountable. And that gospel of the kingdom includes the Torah, whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not, Yahweh does not change Genesis to Revelation. The expectations for our behavior stay the same. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and what's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong because of the Torah. So all you people being out there preaching that the law is nailed to the cross, guess what? You could just chew on this. You could choke on it. Our movement has been focused on the Sabbath as the mark of the beast for over 150 years. Because that used to be the commandment that set us apart from the rest of Christianity. Those who preached lawlessness still at least clung to the other 9, even though it was a ridiculous position, but they continued to preach their lawlessness and adopted worse and worse practices that I won't even speak of. Instead of being the anchor for truth, Christianity gave into society's increasing depravity until we have arrived at the place where we are now. Brothers and sisters, it was an error for us to focus on one commandment when the scriptures were talking about real lawlessness all the time. And here we are. And I'm lost as to know the way back, but all we can do is keep preaching the truth and get people to read their Bibles. Because that's how we stop this stuff. Is to get people to understand that there is a standard out there and there is a God, and he wants us to obey that standard. In fact, he wants us to do it so much that he sent his son to show us how to do it. And that's what we got to get back to. As we increasingly go down this dangerous path, just understand that the saints are those who keep the commandments of Yahweh and their faith in Yeshua. Both things, all the commandments. So I thank you for listening, and may Yahweh bless you and keep you in the name of his son Yeshua. And please stop by firstcenturychristianity.net for more teachings about the faith once delivered, so that we can all get back to that before that great and terrible day of the Lord. Thank you so much, and shalom.